The war between the Volari Empire and the Karn Dominion had raged for decades, spanning hundreds of worlds and leaving nothing but glassed planets in its wake. The Volari were tall, luminous-skinned beings known for their beauty and arrogance. To them, every other race was lesser, primitive. The humans, once rumored to exist on the far edge of the Orion Arm, were spoken of as ghosts of a forgotten age. Captain Lyra Vel never believed the stories. Humans are myths, she scoffed during a mess hall conversation aboard the battle cruiser Kvan. Creatures from ancient tales, too emotional, too chaotic to survive the galactic trials. They burned their own world long before they ever reached the stars. Her subordinates laughed. They'd all heard the tales of fragile beings who fought with nothing but grit and willpower, of a species that refused to die even when their sun dimmed. But that night, in her quarters, Lyra stared out the viewport at the burning moon below. The Dominion had made their advance, and tomorrow, her troops would drop into hell. The next day, chaos. The Volari's landing ships were torn apart mid-descent by anti-orbital flak. The air was thick with ion smoke. Lyra's command pod hit ground with a violent crash that broke half her ribs. She dragged herself free only to find her platoon scattered, dying, and the Dominion closing in. Her armor's automed refused to function. Blood leaked down her side. She crawled through the burning remains of her ship until she found cover behind a fractured durasteel wall. The Dominion troops advanced like shadows, insectoid, with serrated limbs and black carapaces glinting in the firelight. There was no backup. No orders. Just static. She raised her plasma rifle. 1 shot. 2. 3. Then her weapon overheated, and the world went red as something struck her from behind. The next thing she knew, she was on her back in the mud, her vision fading. A Dominion warrior loomed over her, claws raised. And then the impossible happened. A burst of kinetic fire tore through the creature's skull. Another followed, and another. Through the haze, she saw a figure, two-legged, armored in patched metal, carrying an ancient ballistic weapon that spat lead and fire. His armor was dented, scavenged, and painted with a crude blue insignia she didn't recognize. He moved like a ghost. Efficient. Relentless. Human. Lyra blinked, her mind fighting the hallucination. No, impossible. He knelt beside her. "Stay still," he said in a low, calm voice. "You're hurt." She felt his gloved hand press something cold against her wound. Nanosealant hissed as it fused her flesh. Her fading consciousness caught only fragments of his face through his cracked visor, brown skin streaked with ash, human eyes filled not with rage but pity. Then darkness claimed her. Middle, the human called Reinhale. When Lyra awoke, she wasn't dead. She was lying in a makeshift shelter, wrapped in emergency foil, the dim light of a small fire dancing against rock walls. She pushed herself up, wincing as her side burned. The human, Reinhale, as she would later learn, sat across from her, tending to a battered rifle. His uniform was patched with different insignias, none familiar. His helmet rested beside him, revealing hair streaked with gray and eyes that carried far too much sorrow. "You shouldn't move," he said without looking up. "You lost a lot of blood." She stared at him. "You're human. Last I checked." Her mind reeled. "You can't be. You went extinct. Your worlds were destroyed centuries ago." He shrugged. "Funny thing about extinction. Someone always forgets to tell the survivors." She tried to stand, but pain knocked her back down. Why did you save me?" "Because you were alive." She couldn't believe it. The Volari prided themselves on superiority. They had enslaved worlds, burned colonies, yet this human, This relic of myth had saved her without hesitation. For the next 2 days, she watched him in silence. He rationed their supplies, reinforced the shelter, and scouted during daylight. When she asked where they were, he explained the planet was a forgotten war zone. Both the Volari and Dominion fleets had retreated, leaving survivors to rot. "You're a soldier?" she asked. He replied, cleaning his rifle. "Earth Defense Force. Long time ago." "What happened to your people?" He hesitated, gazed distant. "We spread too fast. Fought too many wars. By the time we realized unity was our only strength, it was too late. The stars took more than they gave." She looked away, guilt creeping in. The Volari had once declared humanity unfit for diplomacy, refusing to aid them during their collapse. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. He chuckled. "You didn't do it." But the words lingered like ash between them. Over the following days, they formed an uneasy truce. Rian built traps, hunted food, and occasionally hummed strange songs when he thought she wasn't listening. She, in turn, tried to hide her fascination. His technology was primitive compared to Volari standards, yet it worked. His weapons were simple, yet deadly. And when danger came, he faced it without fear. One night, she awoke to the sound of something outside, the chittering of Dominion scouts. Rian motioned for silence, gripping his weapon. There were 3 of them. Lyra watched in stunned awe as he moved through the darkness, silent and precise. 3 muffled shots later, it was over. When he returned, she whispered, "How do you fight like that? With no armor, no sensors?" He smiled faintly. "You learn to trust your instincts when you can't afford fancy toys." She frowned. "You're reckless. You could have died." "Maybe," he said, sitting beside her. "But someone had to make sure you didn't." She didn't reply. For the first time in her life, a Volari warrior had no words. Days turned into weeks. Rian repaired her armor, taught her how to make a fire without plasma tools, and laughed at her frustration when she failed. He told stories of Earth's oceans, of blue skies and forests that breathed life. In return, she shared tales of the Volari homeworld, crystalline spires, symphonies sung in ultraviolet light. And in that broken world, between ruins and stars, something unspoken grew. Climax, the final attack. Their peace ended one morning when a low-frequency rumble shook the valley. Lyra recognized it instantly. A Dominion crawler, massive and bristling with guns. They were sweeping the wasteland for survivors. Rian checked his ammo, 2 magazines left. "We can't stay here. They'll detect us no matter where we go," she said, scanning the horizon. "Their sensors can read life signatures through kilometers of rock." He nodded grimly. "Then we make a distraction." Before she could protest, he was already moving, setting detonators along the ridge, rerouting power cells into makeshift bombs. "Rian," she grabbed his arm, "you'll die." He met her gaze calmly. "Someone has to buy you time. You can reach the evac point if you follow the riverbed east." She clenched her fists. "No. I won't leave you." His expression softened. "You will. Because that's what humans do. We survive, through others. You have a chance to live. Don't waste it." She shook her head fiercely. "You don't understand. You're the reason I'm still breathing. I won't let you." A distant explosion cut her off. The Dominion crawler had spotted movement. "Go," he shouted. "That's an order, Captain." She froze. Somehow that moment she realized he wasn't fighting for glory or revenge. He fought because he couldn't stop caring, even after losing everything. She fled through the ruins, glancing back just once, just in time to see the mountainside erupt in fire as Rian triggered his charges. The shock wave threw her to the ground, ending the legend lives on. Hours later, smoke still hung in the sky. Lyra limped toward the ridge, heart pounding. When she reached the ruins, she found only ashes and his shattered rifle lying half-buried in the dirt. Tears burned her eyes. Valari didn't cry, but she did. And then, a faint sound behind her. "Didn't think you'd make it that far," came a voice, hoarse but alive. She spun around. Rian stumbled out from behind a boulder, burned and bleeding but grinning like a madman. Her heart nearly stopped. "You're insane." He laughed weakly. "Takes one to know one." Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered. He smiled against her shoulder. "Can't promise that." Weeks later, a Valari recovery vessel finally located them. When the rescue crew saw her walking beside a human, a being thought extinct, their disbelief mirrored the look she once had. As they boarded, one of her soldiers whispered, "Is it true? A real human?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes. And he's the reason I'm alive." When Rian looked at her, she held his gaze. "You know," she said softly, "I used to laugh at the legends, at the idea of humans being more than myth." "And now?" he asked. She reached out, touching his hand. "Now I think the legends didn't do justice." Years later, long after the war ended, a monument was erected on the world where they'd met. Two figures stood carved in obsidian, one Valari, one human, standing side by side beneath a fractured sky. The inscription read, "She laughed at the legend of humans until one saved her life." And across the galaxy, the story spread, not as myth, but as truth. Because sometimes the universe needed a reminder that humanity was never defined by its power, but by its heart.